After dealing with the troublesome grayback, Sebastian was in a very good mood. Next on his list was leading the Alchemy Club students through the final stage of their project. The runes for detecting magical signatures had been perfected, and after more than half a year of study and practice, everyone in the club had mastered the necessary alchemical techniques. Under Sebastian's careful guidance, each student had been able to refine their own student ID card. At last, the project to create a new, school-wide security identification system for Hogwarts was complete. Fred and George and the rest of the Alchemy Club were eager to begin the next step, producing identity plaques for the whole school. The announcement that the Alchemy Club would be making student ID cards for every member of Hogwarts spread like wildfire. It was something entirely new, and students clustered together, reading and speculating. Student ID cards? What's the use of those? Look further down. These are tied to Hogwarts security. You mean the school is going to use ID cards for safety? Don't jump ahead. Read the whole thing. Getting an ID card is like signing a short-term magical contract with the school. If an outsider gets in, they'll be detected right away. Is it really that clever? Ron asked, eyebrows drawn together. He couldn't quite imagine how it worked. When in doubt, he looked to Hermione. Hermione, do you know how these IDs work? Hermione glanced down, a little frustrated. Even she couldn't fully grasp the mechanics with the information given. Fred, seeing everyone's confusion, stepped forward to answer. Professor Swann explained it, he said. Everyone's magical power is unique. Using that uniqueness, we refine a unique identity plaque, the student ID. The ID is the medium for a short-term magical contract with Hogwarts. It's a very special piece of alchemy. Besides your basic details, it contains other functions. For instance, checking exam requirements and essential knowledge points, looking up final grades, receiving school notices, that sort of thing. Fred paused, then grinned. Professor Swann gave us a nice analogy. Think of your magical signature as your personal password. When a new student enrolls, a copy of that password is stored in Hogwarts Castle for 7 years. The student ID is the lock you use to prove the password. So if someone tries to impersonate a wizard, their magic won't match the password stored in the castle. And if the password's wrong, they can't open the student ID or use any of its features. Polyjuice? Harry spoke up. If someone uses Polyjuice potion to change appearance, won't they get past this? Yes, Fred said decisively. Professor Swann says a person's magical signature is tied to their soul. Polyjuice changes the body's appearance, but not the soul. Ron frowned. But what if I lose my ID? Who's going to prove I'm Ron then? Simple, Ronnie, Fred answered, beaming. The ID is only the contract's medium. The contract is between Hogwarts Castle and you. If you lose the card, the castle can check whether the magical contract on file matches your own signature. If it matches, you can reapply for a new card. If you don't have the contract, you're an imposter. At that point, the castle's alarm goes off, and the professors will deal with them personally. Don't call me Ronnie, Ron protested, not entirely convincingly. You're supposed to be very busy, Fred teased. Why are you out here wasting time? How can you be so lazy and shirk your duties? How are you worth the generous salary the school pays you? Ron's irritation was half embarrassment. He had always been envious of his twins. They held positions and earned a tidy income, and his mother frequently sent letters telling him to learn from them. Fred puffed out his chest. Answering everyone's questions is my current job, he declared. Hermione, could we see your ID? She asked Fred plainly. No problem. Fred handed his student ID to Hermione without hesitation. Hermione peered at it. Huh? Why doesn't the photo move when I hold it? When it was in your hand, it showed movement. I can't trigger any of the special functions either. Fred laughed. That's the anti-theft feature. The ID only works in the owner's hand. Anyone else sees just an ordinary card. He took it back, tapped it lightly with his wand, and words of light and shadow bloomed above the plaque. They listed Fred's exam requirements for the year, the essential topics for each subject, and mission notices from the Alchemy Club. The gathered students watched, wide-eyed, as the information hovered and shifted. Fred smiled proudly. There's more you can explore once you have your own card. Fred, Harry asked, what about that alarm system you mentioned? Fred lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. We've refined an extra-large map of Hogwarts. It can automatically detect everyone's identity information. If anyone appears within the school who hasn't signed the magical contract, they'll show up on the map immediately. All right, I won't spoil everything, he said, straightening. I need to tell the prefects of each house to organize students, starting with the first years, to come collect their IDs. Don't forget to bring your pets. Professor Swann said pets will need pet tags, too. Oh, and when you get your ID, you need to wear your school uniform for the photo. Friendly reminder, go get ready so you can take a proper picture. With that, Fred waved and strode off, already juggling the next errands in his head. He still had plenty to do. Hogwarts Castle was unusually alive that morning. The younger students were all busy getting ready for their student ID photos. Normally they went barefaced, but today everyone had pulled out all the stops, determined to look their best. Most of the boys had showered and styled their hair. The girls, limited to uniform robes, put extra effort into hair and makeup. Hermione stood in front of a mirror, staring at her front teeth and tangled hair and feeling discouraged. No matter how she combed it, her hair refused to lie flat. If the photo session hadn't been announced so suddenly, she could have bought some styling products. And those two front teeth, so prominent, like rabbit teeth, didn't help. Sighing, she wished someone could fix it with a spell. Then her eyes lit up. Of course, Professor Mia Swann. Widely known at Hogwarts as the youngest and most beautiful female professor, Mia always looked impeccably made up. Maybe she could do something about Hermione's hair and her teeth. Hermione hurried to the St. Mungo's training office and found she wasn't the only one with the same idea. A line of younger witches had formed, all chattering about how to look prettier for the photos. Professor Mia greeted them with a warm smile, patient and graceful as she moved from student to student, touching up hair and applying a little tasteful enchantment here and there. When Hermione's turn came, she stepped forward and spoke shyly. Professor, my hair's so fuzzy. Could you help? I've been combing it for ages and it won't settle. Of course, Miss Granger. Mia smiled and gave a small, precise wand wave. Hermione felt the tangles smooth out. Her hair became glossy and fell neatly over her shoulders. Would you like to wear it down, a delicate plait, or a bun? A bun, Hermione decided after a moment. It looks more elegant. Mia nodded and, with another graceful flick of her wand, arranged Hermione's hair into a tidy, elegant bun. Hermione hesitated, then added, Professor, could you make my front teeth a bit smaller? They feel too big. That's simple. Mia handed Hermione a mirror. Watch and tell me to stop when they're the size you want. Mia raised her wand and murmured a gentle charm. Hermione felt a faint, cool tingle in her mouth. When she looked again, her front teeth were subtly reduced, now almost perfectly in proportion with her face. She let out a happy, relieved laugh and looked gratefully at Mia. Thank you, she said. I've wanted to change them for ages, but I didn't want braces. Even though my parents are dentists, magic was much easier. Hermione almost ran out, eager to show her friends, but paused when she heard the next student speaking. A seventh-year girl, eyes bright with curiosity, leaned forward. Professor, I heard you married Professor Swann right after graduation. Is that true? Mia smiled. Yes. The girl pressed on, louder now with the attention of the waiting students. If you've been married for so long, why haven't you had children? Conversation stopped in an instant. The students around them leaned in. Hermione stayed. She wanted to hear the answer. Mia put away her wand, smoothed the folds of her long dress, and spoke quietly but clearly. Having children is a decision that deserves careful thought. A child changes a couple's life, their time, their priorities. Raising a child takes a great deal of time, energy, and emotional investment. Before deciding to have children, both partners should consider whether they're ready to make those sacrifices and adjustments. As for Professor Sebastian Swann and me, Mia added with a soft smile, we've chosen to enjoy a few more years together as a couple before discussing children. Wizards are long-lived. Our vitality isn't the same as Muggles, so waiting a little longer is not a problem for us. The younger witches exchanged looks of understanding and approval. They seemed satisfied that the couple simply wanted to enjoy time together. Laughter and chatter soon filled the office again, and the mood lightened. But gossip has a habit of changing as it travels. By the time the story reached other corners of the castle, it had warped. What started as "they're waiting to enjoy married life" became, in whispered retellings, "they don't want kids yet," and then mutated into something crueler: "they can't have children." "Did you hear? Professor Swann can't have children," a student said dramatically in the hallway. "Where did you hear that?" another asked. "It's all over school." "Really? Who started that?" One boy pulled out an old newspaper clipping from 2 years earlier and waved it. "Look, this is proof. The Daily Prophet called him the 2-minute man." "Oh, that was about how fast he caught the golden snitch," someone muttered. "Who knows? The reporters might have hinted at something else. You don't get a nickname like that for nothing." And so poor Professor Swann. The rumors spread like wildfire. The detail about the 2-minute man became, in the students' rout, gossiping imagination, damning evidence of something scandalous. Meanwhile, Sebastian Swann had no idea of the whispers. He was in the alchemy classroom with his club, overseeing the final preparations for the student ID enchantments. Hundreds of teachers and students and their pets would be photographed and magically inscribed. It was a massive job. A single misstep could ruin the whole batch of cards. First years arrived in orderly lines with their prefects for their portraits. Sebastian watched them, checking the equipment and supervising house elves who helped with lighting and positioning. But as he looked up, he began to notice something odd. Among the excitement and nervousness, there was an unmistakable expression in many faces. Pity. He frowned. Why would so many students be looking at him with pity? The thought unsettled him as he turned back to the work, unaware of how the rumor mill had already begun to shape his reputation across the castle. Sebastian stood quietly at the edge of the hall, supervising as the students posed for photographs and signed their magic contracts one after another. He tried to ignore the curious looks. This was work. Questions could wait. The first years were tentative, their stares polite and restrained. Once the second years filed in, they grew bolder. A few of them even openly appraised him, which set his teeth on edge. He forced himself not to use legilimency. His conscience would not allow him to pry. Still, he had other ways of learning things. When Harry finished signing, Sebastian pulled him aside and asked what had happened. Harry flushed and fumbled, clearly embarrassed. He couldn't very well say, "Everyone's talking about whether your nickname is true," so he dropped his head and stammered out what he'd heard. As Harry spoke, Sebastian felt the color drain from his face. For a moment, he nearly went weak at the knees. Anger rose hot and fast. He could feel every pulse in his neck. "Merlin's underpants," he breathed. "Why would anyone start a rumor like that? Who dug up that old nickname? Which bored student was still reading newspapers from 2 years ago? His reputation, years of it, seemed to shred in a single afternoon. He wanted, more than anything, to cast a memory charm on every student and make them forget this day. But it was too late. The rumor had already traveled the castle and, he suspected with dread, had been delivered by Owl to the wider magical community. He could already picture tabloid owls having a field day. Voices floated to him. "Look, Professor Swann's face is red." "It is, redder than a tomato. I've never seen it like this." Did Potter tell him the truth? Is he embarrassed? Enough. Stop. The poor man's already being tormented. He was exhausted by it all. He didn't want to stand another minute and be the subject of whispers and sniggering. He waved Harry away and sank into thought, racking his brain for any way to salvage his name. Every defense, he knew, would sound like a cover-up. Any protest would be dismissed as special pleading. People would not believe him, even if he screamed until hoarse. Time, perhaps, was the only thing that could blunt the sting. With effort, he pasted a thin smile on his face and continued his duties. But the students kept coming, older and bolder now. Some who had been in his classes came straight up to him with concerned eyes and awkward attempts at comfort. He couldn't pretend indifference any longer. He called Fred over, gave quick instructions for the rest of the photo schedule, and hurried back to his office in Muggle Studies. He closed the door, collapsed onto the sofa, and stared at the ceiling. If only I could vanish, he thought. The noise, the gossip. He didn't want to be here. There was a knock on the door, 3 deliberate raps. He tensed, summoned his magic senses, and recognized the visitor without opening. Severus Snape. A prick of alarm ran through him. Was Snape here to gloat? He forced himself to breathe evenly, opened the door, and let Snape into the office. "Severus, what brings you here?" "Nothing in particular," Snape said in his flat, quiet way. "I have some insights on a potion I've been working on. I thought you might be interested." "That was all?" Sebastian relaxed slowly as they talked. Snape's manner was clinical, focused on ingredients and technique, not on gossip. He had overreacted. Severus seemed merely to want to discuss his research and perhaps to distract him from his worries. It felt like the kindness of a strange friend. As the light outside shifted, their conversation wound down. Snape rose to leave, and at the doorway, slipped Sebastian a folded piece of parchment. "I thought this might be of use," he said, then left without waiting for thanks, closing the office door with a soft click. Sebastian unfolded the parchment. A recipe, a potion. Severus Snape had written him a formula. The note said tersely that it might be of use to Sebastian's situation. He stared at the list of ingredients. They were almost comically inexpensive. Hautoinia cordata, malt oil, toad venom, goblin beard, dragon's blood herb, and others. He did the quick mental arithmetic and felt his chest lift. Cheap ingredients meant low cost, and low cost meant immense profit if he bottled and sold it. Not just galleons, dollars, pounds, yuan. Severus Snape, bachelor and brooding potions master, had penned a brew that could, if marketed, make him a fortune. A knock, and the door opened before he could do more than imagine the ledgers in his head. Mia glided in, laughter in her eyes. "You're all over the castle, you know," she teased. "Rumors have spread like wildfire, and I never expected to find you giggling alone in your office." "Rumors," Sebastian said with a forced scoff, folding the parchment flat. "Just rumors. I don't care." Mia raised a brow. "You really don't care?" she said, amusement dancing in her voice. "Come now." Someone's face went bright red. I saw it. Heat rushed to his own cheeks despite himself. He looped an arm around Mia's waist and steered her toward the fireplace. "We're going home," he said abruptly. "I don't want to be here another minute." "Good," she purred. "Once we're home, I'll give you a proper lesson." He didn't tell her about the recipe yet, about the sudden flicker of possibility it had given him. For now, he let himself be led away, trying to calm the whirl of panic and profit in his head. The castle hummed with gossip behind them, but the evening felt, for a sliver of time, like a place he could escape from. Hogwarts in May was a flush of green. The air already carried the warmth of early summer. Conversations among the students were slowly shifting away from gossip about Sebastian's private life and back toward revision. In a month, the end-of-year exams would begin. During Auror training, Sebastian announced solemnly, "To avoid interfering with your study time, the Auror training class will hold its final assessment within the next week. There will be no written exam. Aurors from the Auror office will run a practical examination." The students stiffened. Aurors running the test in person, that sounded serious. As the first cohort at Hogwarts to take this class, everyone wanted to do well. "Be ready in the coming days," Sebastian went on. "When you receive an owl, pack your equipment and go to the main gates. Someone will meet you there and take you to the assessment. The assessment will be in pairs. You will learn your partner only on the day. The test won't take place at Hogwarts." Sebastian scanned the room. "Order of assessment will vary. 7th years will go first. Anyone who finishes early must not reveal anything about their assessment to others. Any breach will result in a canceled result. Don't worry, I've seen your progress this year. If you work hard, you'll do well." Ever since he'd heard about the practical, Harry had been tense. There were only 12 students in the class. 2 groups a day meant at most 3 days until his turn. He understood why the exam was practical. Being an Auror required immediate responses to emergencies. There was rarely time to prepare. After lunch on Thursday, an owl dropped a letter at his feet. The note read in plain hand, "Mr. Harry Potter, please come to the main entrance of Hogwarts within 20 minutes. We will not wait if you are late." That decided it. Harry's apprehension steadied into focus. Being nervous wouldn't help. He needed to be ready. He checked his gear, said goodbye to Hermione and Ron, and walked to the gates under their worried eyes. Cedric was already there, standing beside a tall wizard with his head bowed. Good, Cedric was his partner. They'd been on the Quidditch team together and worked well as a pair. When both of them had arrived, the wizard glanced at the watch on his wrist. Very good. Your group assembled quickly. Under 8 minutes. You'll get credit for promptness, he said approvingly. You can call me Dolores. I will now lead you to the assessment. Today's task is simple, Dolores continued. A dark wizard we'd been tracking escaped last week. His lair was left behind. You must search the lair, find every clue he left, and deduce his whereabouts. Collect evidence of any crimes. Not a single dark arts item may be missed. He pointed to an old teacup on the ground. This is a portkey. On 3, place your hands on it together, and it will take you to the site. 1, 2, 3. Harry didn't delay. He pressed his hand to the teacup. A sudden, sharp tug grabbed him at the stomach, and his feet left the ground. After a dizzy spin, the 3 of them landed in a dense wood. Ahead stood a gloomy, battered wooden house. The walls still bore scorch marks and sigils. Listen, Dolores said, voice low and serious. This place is riddled with traps. Stay alert and use what you've learned. Unless it becomes life or death, I will not intervene. You have 2 hours. Begin. Harry and Cedric exchanged a look, pulled dragonhide gloves onto their left hands, and gripped their wands in their right. They walked cautiously toward the house. No traps at the front. Safe, Cedric murmured after a quick scan. The sitting room looks ordinary, Harry said, but that doesn't mean anything. Many places can look normal on the surface. Look for anomalies, marks, seams in the floor. There's usually a hidden cellar. Cedric's voice stayed low. They searched and found it soon enough. A floorboard that matched the rest so perfectly, the seam was almost invisible, though a tiny keyhole betrayed it. There's a dark arts aura under there, Harry said. Take care. I don't like this, Cedric warned. Shield charm. They cast small shields. Then Harry whispered, Alahomora. The board opened on a shaft of darkness smelling faintly of iron and damp. They climbed down into a basement dense with a seething magical residue and began to work methodically, disarming wards and snares as they went. Time and again, they carried dark artifacts up into daylight, twisted talismans, stained parchments, a silver dagger flecked with old spell residue, until a growing pile lay at their feet. Just as they were finishing, a sharp, malicious cackle echoed from the trees. A voice called, Dolores, you came back alone, and you brought 2 burdens. Today, I will have my revenge. Dolores' expression went hard. Get back, he ordered the 2 students who had hurried to his side, ready to help. That wizard is powerful. I can hold him only for a short while. You 2 use the portkey and return to Hogwarts to fetch a professor. Hurry, now. If I'm to survive, I need help. They'd meant to join the fight, but Dolores was right. Time was everything. Reinforcements were the sensible choice. Exchanging a grim nod, Harry and Cedric grabbed the old teacup together. The familiar yank struck, and they were gone. When they landed, they expected the Hogwarts gates. Instead, they found themselves in another unfamiliar stretch of dense forest. For a moment, Harry only stared at the trees, then at Cedric. Neither of them had any idea where they were. When Harry and Cedric vanished from the clearing with the portkey, the laughter in the trees broke into open, satisfied mirth. Ha, Dolores, these students are so obedient. They leave the moment we tell them to, without a second thought. A tall wizard stepped out of the undergrowth and joined Dolores at her side. The group did well. None of the basement traps were set off. They found every dark arts artifact, too. And how long did it take? Dolores's face lost the last of its severity. She smiled at her companion. 1 hour. Very efficient. They're promising. Impressive. The tall man's grin widened. Which group was this? The 6th and the last. No more will come. Put the props away. I'd love to see their faces, the man admitted, but I suppose I'm destined to be a busybody and play only a minor role. Aren't you curious, Dolores? Not interested. Do your job. Stop dawdling and clear this up. Harry and Cedric's hearts pounded. Something was wrong. The portkey was a fake, and neither of them knew where they had been taken. Had they been trapped? Maybe the Auror had been part of it. Don't overthink it, Cedric whispered. Let's try to use the portkey and go back to the forest. He grabbed the old teacup, but nothing happened. No tug, no pull. The teacup lay cold and inert. It's broken. The portkey's been swapped. It's a single-use portkey. Cedric's voice had gone flat. The teacup we had before had a nick in it. This one's different. Harry scanned their surroundings, senses on edge. That Auror was involved. Do you remember those letters we found earlier? Cedric's eyes brightened. Yes, we found several letters, but we didn't get to read them before we were attacked. Exactly. Harry's voice was low and urgent. When we took the letters out into the open, the Auror's expression changed. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now, it's suspicious. You're right. We brought the letters out, and then they attacked. Maybe it wasn't an attack at all. Maybe it was for show. Why else would they let us go to the portkey without stopping us? So the Dark Wizard escaped. Harry ground his teeth. They were all in on it. With an Auror warning them, they could slip away. Those letters must be proof, communication between them. Clapping cut across the clearing. A figure draped in black robes and wearing a mask stepped deliberately into view. His hand dropped the final echo of applause. A clever deduction, he said, amused. I had hoped you'd figure it out. You said a portkey as insurance, the man continued. I didn't expect you two little fellows to use it. There was no choice. Who told you to uncover what you shouldn't have? Who are you? Both boys jerked their wands up at once, alarmed that they had never seen the man slip in so close. The black-robed man laughed. Who I am won't help you. Even if you see my face, you won't remember it. He flicked his wand, and a thin streak of red light shot toward Cedric. A shield charm flared and took it. The attacker chuckled. A shield charm. Cautious, I'll give you that. But that wouldn't have saved you if I'd used the killing curse. You'd both be dead. Cedric and Harry bristled. They pushed forward with a storm of spells. The man watched, almost bored. The stupefy is strong, but your wand work is too wide. It could have been dangerous, if not for the form. Expelliarmus, fast, accurate, but the link to your next spell is slow. Faster, faster. None of this bothers me. He laughed as Harry and Cedric redoubled their efforts, but the barrage did little more than make him smirk. Harry's heart thudded. They were outmatched. He needed a plan. Taking advantage of Cedric's attack, he grabbed a packet of Peruvian instant darkness powder and cast it down. A choking cloud billowed up, swallowing them. The smoke rose. Harry fumbled, produced the hand of glory, and lit the candle. Cedric, it's me. Don't panic, he hissed as they drew close beneath the small, steady light. Through the gloom, the world was dim but visible. We have to get out, Harry whispered. Do you know apparition? No, Cedric replied under his breath. Only older students learn it. Then we'll try something else. Ambush him while he can't see. You go for him first. Buy me time. I'll use the two-way mirror to contact Professor Swann and ask for help. The black-robed man's voice, calm and close, cut through the darkness. Peruvian instant darkness powder isn't invincible. A large-scale transfiguration handles it nicely. Weeds and underbrush, swollen by his magic, twisted and lengthened into thick, sinewy ropes. Before Harry or Cedric could react, the ropes snaked around their limbs and yanked them together. The darkness thinned, and the black-robed figure swaggered forward. With a small, graceful motion, he removed his mask. Both boys stared. The face beneath the mask was one they knew well. Professor Swann. Professor Swann, how come it's you? Cedric stared at Professor Swann, Sebastian, with a look so aggrieved tears threatened to spill. Heaven knew how desperate he'd been when he was tied up. In a blink, the enemy had become their professor. Who could have borne that? Harry felt almost numb. No wonder the black-robed man had seemed off earlier. He'd held back, criticized their spells, and there'd been a familiar twist to his manner. The memory pulled Harry back to holiday practice sessions with Sebastian, only now the professor's words were a little sharper. Sebastian waved his wand, and the ropes binding them loosened and fell apart into grass. This is an extra assessment for unexpected situations, he said. It's meant to test how well you can improvise when a crisis arises. You were both observant, he added, and your reasoning about the two people you met was sound. Those two were indeed on the same side as me. Harry and Cedric flushed. Their reasoning had mostly been following the script the professor had set. Cedric, recovering some nerve, asked, Professor Swann, how was our performance? Did we meet your requirements? Sebastian smiled. There were commendable moments, but overall you only just passed. Just passed? They looked at each other, indignation flaring. After all that, barely passing? Don't get defensive, Sebastian said lightly. Let's do a post-battle review so you know where to improve. He waved his wand. Two high-definition magic cameras popped out of the trees and hovered. Then he pulled a small enchanted television from an undetectable extension charm bag and projected the footage. The screen showed everything the cameras had recorded from the moment Harry and the other person arrived in the forest. "Are we going to review it here?" Harry asked, glancing around. "The surroundings are private enough," Sebastian replied. "Would you prefer to do this back at the Auror training rooms?" "I don't mind," Sebastian said with a soft chuckle. "But would you want this footage shown to others?" Harry waved his hands. "No, my worry was muggles. Don't worry, I cast a muggle-repelling charm nearby. Nobody will stumble in." "Professor, you're well prepared," Cedric said with a strained smile. Seeing himself on the screen felt like public exposure, though the audience was only the three of them. The thought of showing it to the whole class made his stomach turn. "Look," Sebastian said, pointing to the screen. "When the portkey transported you here, you both remained calm. You didn't panic or shout. That was very good." Cedric reacted quickly and tried to use the portkey to get back. "Also good. But there are risks. Identify them." Cedric thought a moment. "We couldn't tell if the two people were friend or foe," he said. "If they'd been enemies, we could have been ambushed by two adult wizards when we touched the portkey." Harry nodded. "When I touched the portkey, I wasn't cautious enough. You always warn us to be extra careful with portkeys in dangerous situations." "You can be attacked at that moment," Sebastian agreed. "If the portkey is struck, at best it's damaged. At worst, who knows what could happen." "Well said," he continued. "In a situation like this, using the portkey to flee is not the best option. Aurors should apparate away if possible. If an anti-apparition charm is in place, one of you should remain alert and use detection magic to check for enemies hidden by disillusionment charms, while the other contacts for support or attempts to make a portkey. These are life-saving protocols. You still have much to learn." The footage moved on to the moment Harry and the other boy pointed their wands at the black-robed man. "Cedric, you made a big mistake here," Sebastian said. "Many dark wizards begin with the killing curse. Idle talk is a dishonor to your own safety. If you see a figure and sense danger, don't waste words. Strike." On the screen, Cedric had taken off his mask and revealed his face. Watching it, he turned as red as a cooked prawn. From any angle, his behavior had looked foolish. "What if the person is innocent?" Cedric asked hesitantly. "Apologize afterward and compensate with galleons," Sebastian said bluntly. "Better to be embarrassed than dead. Don't gamble on that 1 in 10,000 chance. We only have one life." Their actual combat after that was competent, Sebastian noted, but their teamwork was disjointed. Each acted as if fighting alone. When he grew interested, he grabbed them and demonstrated techniques himself. By the time they walked back to school, Harry and Cedric were still dizzy from information overload. They'd been given a lot to absorb and both knew they'd need time to digest it properly. Before they parted, Cedric turned to Harry. "Have you decided whether you'll become an Auror?" "Yes," Harry said, firm. "I'm not cut out for academic research, and I like the idea of catching criminals." "And you?" Harry asked. Cedric looked uncertain. "I don't know. I want to try different professions while I can. Next year, I might do the St. Mungo's training program. Try it out. I want to experience several things before choosing. For now, Auror training is over, and I need to concentrate on finals. I still want to be top of my year." They left with their plans and uncertainties, both a little wiser and both with work to do. It was late May, and only 7 days remained until the end-of-year exams. A tense air hung over Hogwarts, an invisible mist of anxiety that seemed to settle into every corridor and classroom. Students moved through the castle with different expressions. Some rushed to review classes as if grasping at a last lifeline. Others walked pale and heavy-footed, already worn down by the pressure. A few wandered the halls, muttering facts under their breath, terrified they'd forget something crucial. In the great hall, the long tables, usually full of laughter, felt muted. Many pupils ate mechanically, eyes fixed on textbooks, eating only to keep their strength up. A few worried students tugged at their hair or bit their nails between mouthfuls, heedless of manners. Calming draughts and glee potion had become essential. Fortunately, Hogwarts supplies were ample, and Madame Pomfrey was not overwhelmed. Peeves, the school's mischievous poltergeist, noticed the tension and enjoyed making it worse. He would materialize out of nowhere beside a frazzled student and shout, "Exam time! Stop studying! You'll fail with that level." His pranks sent shrieks through the halls. Timid students would blanch and sometimes collapse in fright. Peeves' behavior provoked growing outrage. A group of students marched to catch him, led by Draco Malfoy, who went to Professor Swann to plead for help. "In just one morning, Peeves made several of my classmates cry," Malfoy said, indignant. "He must be watching them to know exactly how to get to them every time." "Professor Swann," Malfoy urged, "can you do something about him? He's making it impossible to study." Professor Swann's lips curled into a faint smile. "Oh, little Malfoy has made great progress. He's even starting to care about his classmates," he thought, but said aloud, "Peeves is indeed getting out of hand. Come along with me." They found Peeves in a second-floor corridor, jeering and insulting a knot of stressed students. Professor Swann raised his wand and cast a precise piece of magic, an empathy charm that made Peeves and the students feel one another's emotions. The effect was immediate. Peeves' eyes went unfocused, and he muttered to himself, helplessly taking on the students' fear. "It's over. I'm definitely going to fail. OWLs are impossible," Peeves whimpered in a tiny voice. "History of magic is unbearable. There's too much to memorize. I still have to go over the compulsory questions for every subject. I can't mess this up now. I'm going to blow up the school. I won't have to take the exams then," he added, a panicky giggle underneath. The charm worked better than anyone had expected. The students stared, half amused, half relieved. "Professor, will Peeves stay like this?" several of them asked eagerly. Professor Swann smiled and surveyed their brightening faces. "This state will probably last about a week," he said. "Peeves won't bother you again until after the exams. Now, go and study." Once Professor Swann left, the students who had been tormented by Peeves took their revenge in kinder fashion. They bundled him up and played catch, laughing as he squirmed. Their anger drained away, replaced by the lighter joy of release. Back in the Gryffindor common room, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were hunched together over a pile of books. Hermione's quills scratched constantly as she tried to lock every spell and theory into memory. She let out the occasional frustrated mutter and then bent back over her notes. Harry held his astronomy textbook and worked quietly. Astronomy and history of magic were two weak spots for him. Ron, however, was fraying at the edges. He suddenly flung his potions book aside, slumped in his chair, and groaned. "I'm finished. I'm definitely going to have to retake potions. I still can't remember the steps for the compulsory question, brewing the swelling solution. My mind just goes blank when I see Snape's face," he admitted, hands clenched. "I haven't got it right even once. I'm doomed." Hermione rolled her eyes. "I've been telling you to revise since February. What did you say? There's still plenty of time. You'll be fine. You dragged it out till now, and this is what you get." Harry, who respected and feared Snape's sternness as much as anyone, didn't want Ron to ruin his chances. He thought through the recipe and spoke slowly and deliberately, slipping into the calm, explanatory tone of a potions assistant. "Professor Snape did simplify the steps," Harry said. "First, 2 scoops of dried nettles and 3 portions of pufferfish eyes into the mortar. Grind them to a medium-fine powder. Don't get the quantities wrong. Mix 2 portions of that powder and add them to the cauldron. Heat over medium heat for 20 seconds. Remember that timing. After that, give the cauldron a gentle wave with your wand and let it brew for about 60 minutes. He paused to let Ron take it in, then continued. When the brewing is done, add 1 portion of bat spleen, stir counterclockwise 4 times, and switch to low heat for 30 seconds. Don't forget the last wand movement before you turn the heat off. If you forget that step, everything goes wrong. Follow it step by step and you'll get it. And don't just memorize it," Harry added. "I happen to have some ingredients for the swelling solution with me. You can practice it right now." Tears of relief sprang to Ron's eyes as he took the ingredients Harry offered. "Thanks, Harry," he said, choked. "If I pass potions, I'll pay you back. I'll serve you like an ox or a horse." Despite the students' private hopes otherwise, the final exams at Hogwarts went ahead as scheduled. Most subjects were split into theory and practical sections, and this year many professors had made the compulsory questions the focus of the practicals. As the exams progressed, students realized the papers were easier than in previous years. On the afternoon after the last paper, the sky above the castle was bright and clear. A soft breeze skimmed across the black lake, turning its surface to quicksilver that mirrored the castle's towers and the nearby hills. Apart from the 5th and 7th years still sitting exams, the school was full of smiling faces. "This year was so simple," one girl said. "With the compulsory bits in the practicals, it's like the professors just tested what we already did in class." "It helped that homework changed too," another chimed in. "Last year, it was all essays. This year, there were loads of worksheets, everything straight from the textbook. Reviewing was a dream. I reckon every paper but History of Magic will be at least an E," a boy declared, "and getting an O in the practicals shouldn't be a problem." "Summer's going to be easy," someone sighed contentedly. "Don't get too loud," warned another. "There are still people sitting exams. If you distract them, the professor will have your hide." Harry and his friends had their own way of celebrating. They'd changed out of robes and into casual clothes and were lounging by the lake. Harry lay on his back on the grass, hands clasped behind his head, watching the clouds drift. The air tasted fresh. Somewhere nearby, a bird trilled and water lapped softly at the shore. For the first time in weeks, he felt the pressure lift and was left with nothing but contentment. "It's finally over," Ron sighed, stretching out and flopping back on his elbows. He grinned and squinted at the sunlight. "So comfortable." Hermione sat beside them with a book borrowed from the library, but she wasn't reading. Instead, she let the quiet afternoon wash over her, a small smile on her face. "Exams aren't that scary," she teased Ron. "You just leave everything to the last minute." "I tried hard," Ron protested, rolling his eyes, then laughing. "I was shaking when Professor Snape checked my potion. I couldn't control the heat properly. My swelling solution looked awful compared to what you two make. I was sure I'd get a P, but Snape gave me an A. Thanks, Professor Snape." Ron picked up a pebble and skimmed it across the lake. The stone bounced, making tiny concentric ripples. "If I can pass like that, I want to see who actually fails. If anyone has to resit, I'll laugh myself silly." Hermione shot him a look. Ron had been reduced to tears before the exam, and now he'd already forgotten. "Next year you study with me. No leaving it to the last minute." All right. Ron propped his hands behind his head. "Why talk about next year now? I'll work harder." Harry smiled at them both and then asked, "We'll need to pick electives when school starts. What are you thinking of taking?" "If I could, I'd take them all," Hermione said, eyes bright. "Every elective looks interesting. I don't want to miss a single one." "Merlin," Ron groaned. "All of them? Do you even realize how many that is? 12 classes, a full 12? Don't be ridiculous." "If you add Auror training in the St. Mungo's program, that's 14, Harry said. "And there's a new elective next year, Alchemy. It's impossible to take everything." Hermione fell quiet for a moment, then turned to them. "What about you two?" "Easy," Ron announced. "Muggle Studies, first choice. It's fun, and the exam's easy. Fred and George reckon the same, and Percy can't stop talking about it. For the second, maybe divination, for reasons. The rest I'll think about later." Harry hesitated. "I'm not sure which to pick. I asked Professor Swann for advice, though. I can tell you what he said." Hermione leaned forward. "What did he say?" "Professor Swann said divination really tests a person's magical intuition. If you don't have the sight, you won't really learn anything." Harry smiled. "He also said the exam itself is straightforward. If you interpret everything as misfortune, you can still score well. If you want something more rigorous that deals with predicting things, arithmancy is better," he added. Hermione considered that. If Professor Swann thought she wouldn't get much from divination, arithmancy sounded like a sensible choice. "And alchemy?" she asked. "Professor Swann said you need ancient runes as a prerequisite for alchemy. If you have the energy, take care of magical creatures too." Harry shrugged. "That's 3 electives already. You won't have much energy left for anything else." He'd passed on all of Professor Swann's counsel plainly and honestly. Hermione's mind made up itself. She'd skip divination and take the other electives. Ron's list didn't change. Muggle studies and divination suited him fine. For a moment, the 3 of them sat in companionable silence. Harry lay back down and watched the clouds. No more thinking for now. This was time to relax. He could sort the electives with Aunt Mia and the others over the summer. Except for the 5th and 7th year students taking their OWLs and NDUTs, Hogwarts was in a state of relaxation. Because he no longer had to supervise the exams, Sebastian's life suddenly felt much easier. A magical school always had surprises, but for the moment, he could set aside his busyness and enjoy a little leisure. While Harry and his friends chatted by the Black Lake, Sebastian summoned Luna to his office for one last private lesson before the holidays. Luna, a first year, was a remarkable presence. She was unusually gifted, born with a rare sensitivity to the mysterious art of emotion magic. Sebastian had taken her as his apprentice and often taught her personally. Emotion magic was advanced and delicate. It could steer and shape others' feelings, and it was rarely taught to children. The learning threshold was high. Even across the entire wizarding world, few wizards truly mastered it. Sebastian had high hopes for Luna, but he never rushed her or handed her ready-made spells. As a first year, her magical foundation was still fragile. It would limit her use of emotion magic. Better to build a strong groundwork than give her shortcuts. All year, Sebastian patiently taught Luna the basic magical runes that represented emotions. He spent nearly a year helping her establish a rock-solid foundation. Genius often needs only a good foundation to build greatness, and Luna did not disappoint. She progressed quickly, and by the end of April, had mastered all the basic emotional runes. For the sake of her exams, he left her alone in May, and only after the testing did he call her back to check her progress and introduce some advanced applications. When they met, Luna surprised him so completely he was left speechless. "What, you wove the rune for happiness into your singing?" he demanded, incredulous. Luna smiled. "Yes, Professor Swann. I'd been under a lot of pressure during revision, so I went into the Forbidden Forest to play with the Thestrals. One of them seemed to sense my mood and invited me to ride. We flew for a few laps." Sebastian's scalp tingled. Flying on a Thestral without protective gear and without an adult present? The child was far braver than sensible. He bit back the lecture. "And then?" "Up in the sky, I felt so free I wanted to sing," Luna said simply. "I thought the Thestrals should feel my happiness too. It felt like an inspiration. I combined the rune for happiness with my voice, and they loved it." "That simply happened?" Sebastian asked. "Can you consciously control the fusion, song and rune, now?" "I think so," Luna said tentatively. "I'll know if I try." She did try. Luna began to sing a happy children's song, a little tune that seemed to belong to the magical world itself. The world is full of wonder, magic in the air. Owls fly letters through the night, broomsticks skim with flair. Hogwarts waits beside the rails. Come board the train with me. A tiny wand, a whispered spell, and light like starlight gleams. Wingardium Leviosa, say, and brooms will carry dreams. Chocolate frogs that hop and laugh, adventures round each bend. With laughter and with twinkling stars, a wizard's life's a friend. Sebastian stood with his mouth open. It was not merely a song, it was magic cloaked as music. Subtle, precise emotion magic threaded through the melody, so skillfully embedded that anyone unfamiliar with the art would simply feel uplifted and blissful without realizing why. Genius was no longer the right word for this golden-haired girl. In her first year, by leaning on a rare talent and a carefully built foundation, she had discovered a wholly new way of using emotion magic. A rush of ideas flooded Sebastian's mind. Could different musical styles carry different emotional runes? Could a rock song drive passion and courage, or a mournful dirge sap an enemy's morale? Could a voice be tuned to give friends courage while confusing foes in battle? He slowed himself. There would be time to plan Luna's training carefully. Her talent must not be wasted. One immediate thought, however, excited him. This could change Luna's place among the students. If more children heard her, more might understand and appreciate her. He pictured the end-of-year feast. Most students outside 5th and 7th years had about 2 weeks of free time. They could fill the program with volunteers, and Luna could sing on the stage. "Luna," he asked, "would you sing at the end-of-year feast for the whole school? Let everyone feel your happiness." "Of course." Luna's eyes brightened. She loved sharing joy. The end-of-year feast hummed with energy. Children ate quickly, eager to finish and see the performances. Plates emptied under their delighted assault. Laughter, clinking cutlery, and whispered guesses about the program rippled through the hall. When the students set down their forks, Sebastian waved his wand. The longhouse tables rose, shifted, and linked into tiered seating, and a grand stage blossomed in front of the audience, lit by a soft constellation of enchanted lights. Fred and George Weasley hosted, drawing laughter with their comic banter as each signed-up student performed. Singers, dancers, acrobats, even a few timid stand-up acts. The talent and charm the youngsters unleashed were dazzling. Each act seemed to outdo the last. Luna was last. When she stepped on stage and sang, the feast reached its peak. No one expected such a voice from the girl who dressed odd and spoke in strange ways. Her song wrapped the room in warmth and made everyone feel lighter, happier. Some didn't know why. They just wanted more. The halls erupted in cheers when she finished. "Luna, your singing was amazing. One more song. Luna, we love you." They called for an encore, unwilling to let her leave the stage. Saturday, June 26, 1993. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of Malfoy Manor and fell across Draco Malfoy's sleeping face. He blinked at the brightness, sat up slowly, and rubbed the sleep from his eyes. After a quick wash, he went out to the garden where his parents were having breakfast. "Father, Mother, Professor Swann is coming today. Should we have the house elves clean the manor again?" Draco's voice rang a little too loudly in the stillness. Lucius Malfoy frowned. "You've mentioned that 100 times since you came back with Sebastian's visiting card. This is unnecessary fuss. It's not the Malfoy way." Narcissa smiled, lifted her teacup, and said gently, "Draco is still a child. He admires Sebastian. Of course he wants everything to be perfect." "I know my son," Draco replied quickly, a note of worry in his voice. "Professor Swann isn't some country bumpkin. If the place isn't spotless, I'm afraid it will reflect badly on the House of Malfoy." Lucius sighed and folded his newspaper. "The manor has been cleaned 3 times already, inside and out. There's no need for more. Just behave and don't make a mess." "You'll be perfectly respectable as you are. Even the most finicky witch or wizard would find no fault," Narcissa added calmly. She patted the seat beside her. "Come and eat. There's still the whole day. Don't rush." Draco opened his mouth to argue, but his stomach gave an embarrassing growl. He reddened and sat down obediently, practically inhaling his breakfast. "Manners, Draco," Lucius snapped, lowering the paper. "When your guest arrives, you will not be shoveling food into your mouth like a common oaf. Malfoys have standards." "I don't know what they teach you at Hogwarts," Narcissa said lightly, "but please remember your manners." "Humph," Draco muttered, pouting. "Professor wouldn't care about these formalities. Unlike the old pure-blood families, he values talent and wisdom over ceremonies," Draco added quickly. "I asked for the extra cleaning simply to show my respect." Lucius's expression hardened. His little boy had changed. He used to do exactly as instructed. Now he kept talking about what Professor Swann said and how he behaved. Lucius had even heard rumors that Draco no longer clung to pure-blood pride and could speak calmly with mudbloods. Outrageous. When Sebastian came, Lucius decided he would have a very pointed talk with him. "Very well," Lucius said coldly. "You may think Professor Swann disregards formality, but we do not. Make sure you brush up on your meeting etiquette." The day passed quickly. By evening, Draco was watching the clock like a hawk. "It's almost 7. I'll wait at the gate. Professor is always punctual. I don't want him standing there." He hurried to the manor gates. Just as he was straightening his robes one last time, a familiar voice called from the other side. "Draco, are you waiting for me?" Draco looked up to see Sebastian Swann smiling at him. He threw the gate open. "Welcome to Malfoy Manor, Professor Swann," he said, all brightness and practiced courtesy. "Please come in. I'll show you the way." Sebastian smiled and handed Draco a beautifully wrapped box. "A little something for you. I hope you like it." "A gift?" Draco's heart gave a small leap. "For me?" "Open it," Sebastian said with a crooked smile. "Don't worry, this isn't an exam." Draco peeled back the paper and found a delicate model of a Norwegian ridgeback inside, fashioned to look exactly like Norbert. He remembered the dragon hatching in his first year, how small and fierce it had been, and held the model as if it were a treasure. He wanted to play with it at once, but kept his composure. "So," Sebastian teased as they walked toward the house, "what have you been doing these holidays? Bored at all?" Draco had anticipated this question and was ready. Not at all. I've been working on the summer assignments every professor set. They were difficult, he added, but I've almost finished them. In fact, I did most of them in a week. Sebastian grinned. Very impressive. A fine example for the rest of the house. If only everyone were as diligent. It wasn't idle flattery. Sebastian had seen Draco's effort over the past year and had often helped him with questions. He understood the nature of Hogwarts summer work too. Unlike the Muggle sort, these assignments were meant to prepare students for the next year's core lessons. Sebastian had noticed, for example, that Snape's task previewed shrinking potions, an important third-year topic. At that moment, Lucius and Narcissa appeared at the manor door. Lucius stepped forward with the exact formal courtesy expected of him and offered his hand. "Welcome to Malfoy Manor, Sebastian." Narcissa beamed. "You haven't been here in ages. Come in. Don't just stand there." Sebastian smiled as he handed over the carefully chosen gifts for Lucius and Narcissa. For Lucius, there was a cane shaped like a serpent, a sleek silver snake coiling up the shaft, emeralds set into its eyes. Narcissa received a lady's brooch of golden vinework, studded with delicate gemstones, elegant and unmistakably noble. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness, Sebastian," Lucius said, smiling. After the polite exchange, Lucius led Sebastian deeper into the Malfoy mansion. Even after nearly a decade, the house still carried that old, opulent air. Its interiors were rich with Victorian flourishes. Stone carvings and tapestries matched each other, giving the rooms a solemn, dignified look. In modernity, it might fall short of Swann Manor, but in style and temperament, the two places had their own strengths. They reached the dining room, where a grand table was set with fine linens and goblin-made silver that caught the candlelight. A lavish spread lay at the center, red wine glowing in the flames. Conversation flowed easily. Sebastian chatted with Lucius and Narcissa, and the topic soon turned to Draco's performance at Hogwarts. "Sebastian, Draco's been spoiled by us. We'll be relying on you to keep an eye on him at school," Lucius said lightly. "Don't worry," Sebastian replied. "Draco's diligent. There aren't many Slytherins who work harder than he does." Lucius and Narcissa beamed at the praise. Laughter and the clink of glasses filled the room. For a time, the evening was entirely pleasant. After dinner, Lucius took Sebastian to his study, a room protected by top-tier wards that would keep anyone from eavesdropping. Once the door was closed, Sebastian wasted no time. "Lucius," he said, "I've come with important news." Lucius raised an eyebrow. "Important enough to come in person?" He lifted his teacup and took a small sip. Seeing Lucius's measured expression, Sebastian leaned forward and spoke quietly. "You may not know this, but the Dark Lord has reappeared." The cup slipped from Lucius's hand. It hit the floor with a crash, and hot tea splashed across the carpet and onto his shoes. Lucius stared at Sebastian, disbelief turning his face pale. The Dark Lord had been dead, or so everyone said, killed more than a decade ago when he tried to murder a child, the incident that made Potter the so-called savior. How could he be back? And if he had returned, why had no Death Eater heard? Why did an outsider like Sebastian know first? "Do you realize what you're saying?" Lucius demanded, his voice low. "I do," Sebastian said, meeting his gaze. "The Dark Lord has reappeared. And from what I can tell," he added, "he's likely to fully return within 3 to 5 years." "You're lying." Lucius's voice trembled. "He's dead." "Everyone says he's dead. That doesn't make it true." Sebastian's tone was almost teasing. "No body was ever found at Potter's place." He leaned in. 2 years ago, I saw him, a remnant of his soul, secretly infiltrate Hogwarts, attempting to steal the Philosopher's Stone. So he's not dead. He's been looking for ways to come back." Hearing that, shouldn't you be pleased, Lucius? Isn't this pleased? Lucius cut in, incoherent for a moment. He tried to marshal his composure but failed. Part of him did feel a dark, selfish joy. When the Dark Lord led them, the Malfoys had enjoyed unmatched standing. Lucius had been favored and received deference even from the minister. Had he known of this news earlier, he might have sought the Dark Lord out at once. But things had changed. They had grown used to autonomy, and during the Wizengamot trial, Lucius had fiercely denied allegiance, insisting he had been under the Imperious curse to avoid punishment. Now the Dark Lord's return without so much as a message stirred unease. Had the Dark Lord ceased to trust him? How could he not have known about an attempted theft at Hogwarts? If the Dark Lord returns, Sebastian said softly, do you think he'll trust you? If he trusted you that much, why didn't he ask for your help in coming back? The Malfoys carry weight in the wizarding world. With your assistance, his revival would be much easier. Beads of sweat formed on Lucius's forehead. He opened his mouth as if to protest, but no words came. The relationship between our families has always been strong, Sebastian continued, his tone earnest. The Swann family was able to remain neutral because of your mediation. When I first became an Auror, I used my position to help remove some of your rivals, strengthening your standing. Swann Alchemy still maintains close business ties with the House of Malfoy. He paused, letting the history of favors and alliances hang between them. Then, leaning back on the sofa, Sebastian said with deliberate calm, "That's why I've chosen to share this with you now. It's time for the House of Malfoy to realign." Realign? How could he possibly align? Openly and directly join the forces resisting the Dark Lord, and even if he wanted to, would Dumbledore shelter his family? When the Dark Lord returned, he would almost certainly come for the Malfoys himself. For the House of Malfoy, there had always been only one choice: remain with power. Lucius wiped the sweat from his brow, loosened his collar, and discarded ceremony. "Sebastian, thank you for the offer, but the Malfoys have no choice." He drew a measured breath. "Even if the Dark Lord no longer trusts me, he still needs me. Most of the old pureblood families look to the Malfoys for leadership. He needs the Malfoys' reputation, the Malfoys' influence, and more than anything, the Malfoys' galleons, so we can keep cooperating as we have. Each of us can have our camp, and we'll offer each other the conveniences we need. Isn't that the safer way?" Sebastian raised a finger in a slow, dismissive wave. "That idea is outdated, and it won't work for you now." "How?" Lucius began, about to argue, but Sebastian cut him off with a soft chuckle. "Don't rush, Lord Malfoy. I'll tell you another secret. The secret of the Dark Lord's immortality." Lucius froze. The Dark Lord's immortality. What on earth did that have to do with him? He forced himself to listen. Sebastian spoke calmly. "The reason he didn't die, why he became that disembodied thing, neither fully human nor ghost, is because he made himself an object of the dark arts. He made a Horcrux. As an old pureblood family, you should know of Horcruxes and their consequences." At the word Horcrux, a memory hit Lucius like a cold wind. Family records mentioned them and forbade descendants from creating such things. A Horcrux would keep someone from being killed, yes, but at the cost of splitting every bit of their soul. A person who did that wasn't whole anymore. His appearance and temper warped. No wonder the Dark Lord had become grotesque and volatile. The Horcrux explained it all. But what did that have to do with the Malfoys? Sebastian's next words felt like an ice cellar. "Do you remember an old black leather notebook, the one with Tom Riddle's name on it?" Lucius didn't let himself think the rest. He went pale and trembled. You mean what I think?" Sebastian's voice was gentle and fatal. "I'm afraid not. That notebook was one of the Dark Lord's Horcruxes." The strength drained from Lucius. He sank into the sofa as if the floor had given way. He had actually placed one of the Dark Lord's immortality charms into a little girl's cauldron, and then let it be taken into Hogwarts. He leapt up, crossed the room in a blind rush, grabbed Sebastian's sleeve, and gripped it so hard his knuckles showed white. "Sebastian, since you saw the notebook, you must know where it is. You must be able to get it back. Name any condition. I'll agree to it. Just get it back." "It's too late," Sebastian said, regret plain on his face. "How do you think I discovered the notebook was a Horcrux? It controlled a student, opened the Chamber of Secrets, released the basilisk." Basilisk. Lucius's mind went back to the headlines, the stunned reports of a Gilderoy Lockhart fiasco and a mysterious young hero. He'd even congratulated himself on the dark luck that had let someone else clear away ancient trouble. And now he saw how everything tied back to the notebook. Then, what happened to the notebook? Do you think Dumbledore would ignore something like that happening at his school? Sebastian's mouth twisted. "After the basilisk was dealt with, we followed the trail and found the notebook without alarming any of the students. It was Dumbledore who told me that the notebook was one of the Dark Lord's Horcruxes. As for the notebook itself, it was destroyed. Lucius sagged back onto the sofa, all resolve and color gone. He had handed the Dark Lord's Horcrux into a child's hands, and it had been destroyed. The consequences of that mistake could not be measured. "There is one more thing," Sebastian said slowly. Lucius's chest tightened. "About Draco." Lucius's head snapped up. "Go on. Say it. I can bear it." "Draco offended the Dark Lord in his first year without knowing it." "How could that be?" Lucius groped for details. Sebastian explained, careful to avoid certain specifics. "Do you remember I told you the Dark Lord once infiltrated Hogwarts to steal the Philosopher's Stone? As a remnant soul, he couldn't take it directly, so he possessed someone to steal the stone for him. Draco and a few of his friends discovered the intruder. They tried to stop him." Sebastian skirted the most precarious phrases. "The Dark Lord failed that night. He was thwarted," Lucius whispered, the meaning dawning like poison. "So Draco unwittingly offended him," Sebastian finished. "The Dark Lord might not remember every slight, but who can say for sure about such things?" Lucius felt his heart hollow out. The House of Malfoy was finished. Between himself and Draco, they had managed to cross the Dark Lord, and that was an unforgivable thing. He sat staring, speechless. "You said it yourself," Sebastian murmured, leaning closer. "The Malfoys have no choice." "What should I do? Turn to Dumbledore? Will he trust me? Will he shelter us?" Lucius's voice was raw with bitterness. "I don't even trust him. In the last war, he couldn't protect the Order. His methods are weak. If he'd been tougher, seized the Ministry, used the full power of the wizarding world against the Dark Lord, maybe the outcome would have been different." Sebastian rose and stood over him. "You're thinking in the wrong direction." He looked down with an intensity that made Lucius uncomfortable. "No one said you must cast your lot with Dumbledore. For the House of Malfoy, there is a better choice than Dumbledore." He paused, and then, with a quiet confidence that filled the room, added, "That choice is me." Lucius stared at Sebastian for a few seconds, then burst out laughing. "You? You want me to swear allegiance to you?" "Ha!" Lucius pointed at him, laughing until he ran out of breath. "Are you trying to be funny, Sebastian? Don't you think it's naive to imagine you can shelter the Malfoys from the Dark Lord? You really think Dumbledore could guarantee that? You're clever, I'll give you that. But remember, the Dark Lord is a genius among geniuses. How old are you compared to him? Decades. How could you possibly catch up?" Lucius's laughter turned manic. Sebastian didn't get angry. He simply let his magic boil, a slow, powerful tide washing toward Lucius. The laughter cut off like a snapped string. Lucius's pupils shrank. He looked at Sebastian with a new, unsteady awe. Hiss, the feeling was the same as facing the Dark Lord, a constricting, suffocating pressure. This was Sebastian? How could he be so strong? The man who had once been several years beneath him in school and had always called him senior, now made Lucius feel like he was dreaming. Until that moment, Lucius had always taken a certain superiority for granted. After all, Sebastian had once come to him to ask for help, protecting the Swann family from the Dark Lord. Sebastian had grown rich, and Lucius had respected his business sense, but never thought he was anything more than a clever merchant. In just over a decade, Sebastian had become something else entirely. It was terrifying. "Sir," Sebastian said with a faint smile, "I admit the Dark Lord is very powerful, but he chose the wrong path. He should never have split his soul. Without a family legacy, he never understood how vital a whole soul is to a wizard. Maybe he did understand and chose eternal life anyway. If his soul had remained whole, given his talent, he might well have been able to beat Dumbledore in a straight fight. But he's been gone for nearly 13 years. That absence gave me an opportunity to catch up. Whether I can stand against him now, we'll only know once we fight. I can give you a little more confidence." Sebastian opened his arms and turned to Lucius. "Pick up your wand and cast the killing curse at me." Lucius blinked. "What? You want me to? Just to prove my point," Sebastian said coolly. "For us to have a civil conversation, I need to show you what I can do." "Fine. It's only a killing curse," Lucius muttered, half to himself. Something in Sebastian's calm made him comply almost against his better judgment. He lifted his wand, teeth clenched, and shouted, "Avada Kedavra!" A green jet burst from Lucius's wand and screamed toward Sebastian. It struck the air around him and was stopped, not by a flicker, but by a bright, solid barrier. The green light hit and shattered harmlessly against that strange, physical shield. How is that possible? Lucius felt as if his world had tilted. A shield charm can't stop a killing curse. To a killing curse, an ordinary shield charm is like tissue paper, Sebastian said, settling back onto the sofa and crossing his legs with satisfaction. To stop it, you need something with a physical form. That's basic. Lucius stood, dumbfounded. Sebastian's faint, satisfied smile widened. He had spent years perfecting layered wards. This was the moment they were meant for. Now, seeing Lucius stunned and leaning forward, Sebastian allowed himself a small, deep smile. "Do you believe me now?" he asked. Lucius's mind raced. If Sebastian could stop an Avada Kedavra with a physical ward, what else could he do? The fact that Sebastian was a Hogwarts professor, an ally of Dumbledore, and that he and Dumbledore were close in the information Lucius had, suddenly made sense. If Dumbledore alone had been the Dark Lord's greatest obstacle, with Sebastian added, the Dark Lord might be outmatched. Sebastian was, without doubt, the best option left for the Malfoys. Lucius's face softened. Servility crept in unnoticed. "Sebastian, can you tell me how to protect Malfoy House from the Dark Lord?" "I can offer two options," Sebastian said evenly. "The first is the simplest. Out of respect for the old connections between our families, I can put Malfoy Manor under a Fidelius charm and be your secret keeper. Alternatively, I can provide a secure safe house and relocate you there. Either way, there's no immediate payment required. You and your family would lie low for a few years after the Dark Lord's return. The downside is obvious. You will have to hide and won't be free. Your assets will suffer. The Dark Lord's followers won't ignore a family of your standing, and once you go into hiding, the Malfoys could lose much of their position. The advantage is also obvious. It's safe." Lucius considered the offer and then shook his head. It was a secure option. Sebastian's character and skill made him a reliable secret keeper. But Lucius and Narcissa could hide. Draco was still too young. Even worse, after the conflict, the family might decline to second- or third-rate status. That was unacceptable. "And the second option?" Lucius asked. "The second option costs far more," Sebastian said with a slight smile. "You would have to carve out the family's future with your own intelligence and courage. When the Dark Lord returns, you would go back into his circle as an agent. Use the Malfoy name to gain access. Feed me useful information. Of course, your life wouldn't be constantly at risk. He needs the Malfoy name. But you will be humiliated, sidelined, and suppressed. The Dark Lord will never trust you fully. It will be unbearable at times. But endure it. After Lord Voldemort falls, I will vouch for you. I will portray you as the man who suffered humiliation for the greater good, a hero who sacrificed reputation for the wizarding world. With that merit, the House of Malfoy will regain respect. I will personally help you share in the victory and the spoils. Your family will rise again. The second path is high risk, but the rewards are great. It all depends on what you're willing to choose. Being an undercover agent? Lucius hesitated when Sebastian made the suggestion. The upside was enormous. Put everything else aside, if they succeeded, the House of Malfoy could be transformed overnight into a heroic family, an outcome far beyond their present standing. After the Dark Lord's fall, the Malfoys had barely escaped the Ministry's purge by blaming Imperius and making donations, but their fortune had been pared down and their influence greatly diminished. Malfoy Manor still glittered, but many no longer hesitated to trample on them. Last year, when the Ministry searched for dark artifacts, that warm-blooded traitor Weasley had even led a raid on the manor. If not for that intrusion, the Dark Lord's diary might never have been discarded, and the family might not have been pushed into such a corner. But being an undercover agent, the risk was almost unbearable. The enemy was the Dark Lord. If they were exposed, death would be only the least of it. Lucius ground his teeth and, lowering his voice, suggested to Sebastian, "If the Dark Lord is only a remnant soul, why don't you and Dumbledore take advantage of that and finish him off?" He didn't say the word aloud, only made a cutting gesture. In his mind, the Dark Lord was so weak now that this was the only chance to end him for good and spare the world further terror. Sebastian understood at once, of course. No one had a more obvious motive to remove the Dark Lord than a Malfoy who called himself loyal and righteous. Sebastian shook his head gently. We would like nothing more than to settle this once and for all, he said. But at present, the Dark Lord exists in a very unusual state. No magic can truly kill him now. Only after he has fully returned can he be slain. Lucius felt a sting of disappointment. If that were true, then they had no choice but to play the long game. Send someone inside. If he refused, and the Dark Lord rose again, the House of Malfoy might not survive the Ministry's next sweep. For the sake of Sissy and Draco, sacrifices would be necessary. Sebastian watched him without pressure, letting the weight of the decision settle. After a long moment, Lucius straightened, voice firm. I want the House of Malfoy to have a brighter future. I will be your agent. Sebastian snapped his fingers in approval. A wise choice, my lord. He produced a sleek, enchanted contract and set it on the table. Sign this. Don't worry, he added with a faint smile. The terms are generous, but betray me and the magic will tell us at once. Lucius had no real objection. He had seen enough deception to know that a binding oath was a mutual guarantee. If roles were reversed, he would demand the same. He took the contract, verified Sebastian's assurances, and signed without hesitation. When his hand left the quill, he slumped back into the sofa, every muscle finally relaxing. He was exhausted. Sebastian watched him, amused. Now that we're on the same side, he said, I'll share some information that could increase the House of Malfoy's wealth by hundreds or even thousands of times. Lucius sat up, alert again. What is it? Sebastian let his eyes drift over the room. You have good taste. Many of the items here are Muggle antiques. Quite a number are even Muggle royal artifacts. Remarkable. Lucius couldn't help a small, proud smile. He knew, though he rarely boasted, that the Malfoy ancestors had once acquired vast wealth and influence from Muggle royalty, which had formed the foundation of their fortune. The manor itself, those artifacts, each piece could have bought the fortunes of lesser wizarding families. But with the international statute of secrecy and the wizarding world's retreat into hiding, the Malfoys had been forced, for the sake of survival, to lean into pure-blood politics rather than commerce. Why was Sebastian bringing up Muggle antiques? The question hung in Lucius's mind. Sebastian leaned forward. The wizarding world's pie is too small. If we want to grow, we must look to a larger market. Lucius frowned. You don't mean to profit by breaking the statute, Sebastian said, matter of fact. Imagine the value of magic to Muggles. A potion that is ordinary to us would be a miracle to them. If we control the supply, magical goods, potions, rare ingredients, we would be the first to open a floodgate. We stockpile the right materials, brew the right potions. When Muggles learn what we can do, demand will be enormous. Prices would be astronomical. Those who lead the way will be hailed by history and will grow unimaginably wealthy. The House of Malfoy would be restored to the glory it enjoyed before secrecy drove us into the shadows. Sebastian's voice grew passionate. I will stand at the forefront. And you, Lucius, will you act as a representative of the pureblood houses, rallying them to my side? Lucius felt his blood race. To be the representative of the pureblood families, to bring back immeasurable wealth and status, each promise was intoxicating. He rose on impulse and with perfect old-fashioned show of respect, placed his right hand over his heart and bowed deeply. From today onwards, he said, voice steady, your will is the direction for the House of Malfoy. Mr. Swann, Sunday at noon, Hogwarts lay quiet and still, like a serene oil painting. Without the usual bustle of students, the scene felt a little lifeless. For Sebastian, however, the weekend had been anything but idle. Today was special. Professor Kettleburn of Care of Magical Creatures was retiring, and nearly the entire staff had come to see him off. To Sebastian, Sylvanus Kettleburn was the very definition of a creature enthusiast. As Hogwarts' Care of Magical Creatures professor, he had a reckless streak a mile wide and a habit of landing himself in perilous situations. Over the years, he'd survived at least 62 probationary periods. The most infamous incident was when he staged the mime play The Fountain of Fair Fortune and magically enlarged an ashwinder for atmosphere. The enchanted serpent unexpectedly exploded on stage, throwing the theater into chaos and filling the hospital wing for days. Fred and George once rescued a fire crab from his class and fed it a fizzing whizzbee just to see what would happen. Kettleburn's lessons were the stuff of Hogwarts legend, full of mishaps and laughter. It was no wonder many third years chose his class. Still, in his own words, he had only one arm and half a leg left, and he wanted to retire and spend more time with what remained of his limbs. By the time Sebastian reached the Great Hall, most of the professors were already gathered for a small farewell banquet. A few rounds of port loosened tongues and spirits. Soon the staff were standing, glasses in hand, circulating and chatting. Professor Sybil, tipsy and theatrical, was determined to give Sebastian a prophecy. "Ominous," she announced, bottle in hand, peering at him through her peculiar glasses. "I see, ominous." Sebastian leaned forward, amused. "Can you be more specific, Professor Sybil?" "I see." Sybil slurred slightly, brow furrowed. "Behind you, a vast black army covers the sky, flying up and down, almost engulfing you." She hiccuped and added with a hiccuping flourish, "To know more specifics, that will be 100 galleons, for the drinks. No, for the prophecy." "She's had a bit too much," Professor McGonagall said crisply, stepping forward to take Sybil by the arm and steer her away. Her own cheeks were flushed. She, too, had had some wine. With a gentle shake of her head toward Sebastian, she warned him not to take the seer too seriously. "She's not herself." "No, I'm not drunk," Sybil protested, waving a hand. "I still need that 100 galleons." Mia smiled and came to help McGonagall ease Sybil out of the throng. With a quick flick of her wand, McGonagall conjured a sofa, and as the wine finally took its toll, Sybil collapsed into a deep sleep. McGonagall and Mia covered her with a thin blanket and left her to rest. Sebastian felt a pang of disappointment. McGonagall meant well. She was protecting him from taking advantage, but he had genuinely wanted Sybil to finish. He would have happily paid 100 galleons. Despite her odd manner, Sybil's prophecies had a worrying habit of coming true. He was curious what she had seen. A black army flying up and down could only mean one thing: Dementors. In the original timeline, Dementors were indeed stationed at Hogwarts that year, but why would she see them approaching him? Suppressing the urge to press the matter further, Sebastian raised his glass and drifted toward Kettleburn to offer his congratulations. "Sebastian," Kettleburn said with a hearty grin, "I hear the basilisk at your farm has put on a few circles. Your staff are doing a fine job." "It'd been hungry for some time," Sebastian answered with a smile. "Now the food shipments have caught up. It's normal for it to put on weight." Kettleburn brightened. "I've been fairly idle in Hogsmeade lately. I'd like to come visit your basilisk sometime. Could you arrange that?" "Of course," Sebastian said. "I'll tell the staff. You can go whenever you like." The old man beamed and drained his goblet in a single swallow. After the banquet, Sebastian volunteered to accompany Professor Kettleburn back to Hogsmeade. Outside, a cool breeze cleared the headiness of the wine. Sebastian flicked his wand to dispel the lingering scent of alcohol from his clothes and set off toward the headmaster's office. The holidays were over. It had been a week since term resumed, and Dumbledore had been unusually relaxed. Perhaps too relaxed. It was time to push a long-awaited educational reform and give the headmaster something to do. Sebastian had been at Hogwarts for 3 years and had proved himself repeatedly. His position as deputy headmaster was no empty title. He no longer needed to be as cautious as when he first arrived. It was time to take a more active role in Hogwarts' staffing and policies. He carried with him the reform plan he drafted 3 years earlier and sought out McGonagall to accompany him to Dumbledore's office. When the two of them appeared together, Dumbledore's eyes twitched with that mix of fond exasperation and curiosity he reserved for Sebastian. The young man always arrived with new schemes. Couldn't he let Dumbledore rest a week longer? Yet every plan Sebastian proposed in the past had been cogent, and the changes had improved Hogwarts. Busy as he was, Dumbledore could not refuse. "Sebastian," Dumbledore said gently as they entered, "speak plainly. If your ideas are reasonable, I'll cooperate." Sebastian smiled and spoke up without preamble. "Headmaster, the professorships for Defense Against the Dark Arts and for Care of Magical Creatures are both vacant. I want to discuss plans for recruiting new professors." When Sebastian asked his question, Dumbledore let out a relieved smile and leaned back in his chair. He had expected something weightier. If this had been any other year, he thought, he would already be fretting over finding a new professor. It had never been easy to find someone who met Hogwarts standards, and was willing to take on the important post of defense against the dark arts. This year, however, that problem was already solved. "You needn't worry," Dumbledore said calmly. "I've already arranged the defense against the dark arts professor. I've made an agreement with Remus Lupin." Sebastian nodded. He knew this already. Lupin had come to an understanding with Dumbledore as early as last year, and had even turned down all his film and television work for the latter half of the year to prepare for teaching at Hogwarts. Lockhart had written about it incessantly in his letters. The sequel to Wandering with Werewolves couldn't continue filming without Lupin. Lupin, after all, was the soul of the show. Replace him, and the audience might not accept it. The drama's reputation could easily plummet. For Hogwarts students, though, Lupin was an excellent choice. He had traveled widely, faced countless dark creatures, and his practical knowledge of dark wizards surpassed that of many ordinary witches and wizards. In his classroom, students would learn not just from books, but from the hard-won experience of someone who had confronted real threats, a kind of practical instruction often more valuable than theory. Before Sebastian had finished his thought, Dumbledore went on. "As for care of magical creatures, I intend to invite Hagrid to teach that class. I believe he can do it." At the name Hagrid, Sebastian stifled a sigh. It was hardly surprising that Dumbledore wanted Hagrid. Dumbledore had always been fond of him, but Hagrid's record as a teacher was complicated. His passion for magical creatures was unmatched, especially for the dangerous or gigantic ones, acromantula, dragons, hippogriffs. He treated many of them more like pets than lessons, and had little patience for students' fears. Hagrid's approach was rough and wholehearted. He often thrust students into encounters with dangerous beasts as if bravery were universal. He rarely considered exam requirements either. OWL and NET objectives were not something he planned toward. Students spent time tending flobberworms or hybridizing blast-ended scroots, which drew complaints from those who cared about grades. Hermione and her friends had even dropped his class in their 6th year. Sebastian regarded Dumbledore, paused, then said, "I accept your choices for them. But 3 years of teaching have shown me that knowing something and teaching it are often two different things," Sebastian continued. "That's especially true of new professors." "That is true," Dumbledore admitted with a hint of helplessness. "But new professors must grow into their roles. That process is unavoidable." "It is," Sebastian agreed, "but we can accelerate that growth. For example, by having professors prepare lesson plans in advance and then teach according to those plans." McGonagall and Dumbledore exchanged a look. "Sebastian, could you explain what you mean by a lesson plan?" Professor McGonagall asked. "Of course," Sebastian said. "A lesson plan lays out clear teaching objectives and requirements. It includes a schedule for each class, step-by-step teaching procedures, the key and difficult points to emphasize, a checklist of teaching aids, and post-class reflections on teaching effectiveness. Together, these form a complete plan that helps a professor deliver lessons consistently and effectively." He handed over the annual lesson plans he had kept since he began teaching. "These are the plans I write every year. They aren't static. Each year I tweak them based on students' actual progress. If new professors prepare like this during the holidays, they won't be so flustered when term begins." McGonagall flipped through them, approval plain on her face. "No wonder the students praise Muggle studies so much," she said. "You should have shared this sooner, Sebastian. If new professors could prepare like this, they would adapt to teaching much faster." Her eyes brightened. "This method isn't just for new staff. Experienced professors could benefit from it too." Dumbledore stroked his beard and frowned thoughtfully. "However," he began slowly, "it would increase professors' workload. Writing detailed lesson plans is no small task." Sebastian's lips curved into a small, victorious smile. He had expected that objection. "Exactly, Headmaster. That's why I've long thought our teaching staff should be expanded." "Expanding the faculty?" The suggestion instantly stumped Dumbledore. By long tradition, Hogwarts had one professor per subject. There was no precedent for enlarging the staff. If they hired more professors, how would they coordinate teaching so the curriculum remained coherent? Dumbledore frowned, taking Sebastian's idea seriously. Sebastian sighed inwardly as he watched the headmaster's thoughtful expression. He had been turning this over for days. His prescience made him dread that the great battle in the original timeline might really take place at Hogwarts. He wanted Dumbledore to recruit more teachers, either extra professors or powerful wizards, so the school could better defend itself and, above all, avoid sending students into a battlefield unprepared. Even aside from safety, more staff would be a relief to the current professors, whose workload was crushing. He explained why. Hogwarts professors did far more than the teachers at ordinary schools. They taught both theory and practical magic, so every lesson was demanding. For lower years, a compulsory course professor might teach at least 2 major classes a week for students across different years, requiring careful, grade-by-grade planning. Even when 6th and 7th year students gathered for single advanced classes, it only temporarily eased the burden. Altogether, a professor could easily be teaching a dozen major classes a week. And teaching was only one part of the job. Professors spent hours preparing exams, setting and marking homework, and providing detailed feedback on essays, especially upper-year essays, which required in-depth review. After-school tutoring and answering students' questions often doubled their daily workload. Pupils came for help with tricky spells, potion recipes, and personal guidance. Many teachers also held multiple roles. Snape, for example, was not only potions master, but also head of Slytherin and a leader of the dueling club. McGonagall taught Transfiguration while serving as Gryffindor head and deputy headmistress, balancing student affairs, academic management, and curriculum coordination. The intensity of the work, Sebastian argued, was inhumane. Seizing the moment, he pressed his case. Headmaster, you're right to hesitate. Preparing lessons will add to the professor's burden. At the current pace, even the best will burn out. And that hurts teaching quality and leaves no room for creativity in the classroom. Dumbledore listened, hands folded on the table, waiting. If we recruit additional professors, Sebastian continued more firmly, the teaching load for everyone will drop. Professors would have time to prepare more thoughtful, interesting lessons and to pursue academic research, which they could then bring back to benefit the students. They could also provide more individualized guidance, helping pupils learn faster and receive instruction suited to their abilities. Professor McGonagall's face brightened. They could conduct research and even mentor promising students in original work. Hogwarts' scholarship would rise. She added with a tinge of regret, "We haven't had any student publications in recent years." Dumbledore nodded, the tension of his brow easing and a small smile returning to his face. Sebastian handed a folder of concrete proposals to the 2 professors. "These are specific management measures for recruiting new staff. My plan is to appoint the experienced existing professors as subject leaders for their courses." "Subject leaders?" Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Sebastian said. "Subject leaders will be seasoned teachers responsible for choosing textbooks and reviewing lesson plans submitted by new professors. Where a lesson plan is flawed, a subject leader can point it out and help the newcomer integrate into Hogwarts teaching methods quickly. That way, expansion won't dilute quality, it will improve it through collaboration." "Other subjects might be straightforward," McGonagall said, "but what about care of magical creatures and defense against the dark arts?" "Care of magical creatures first," Sebastian smiled. "Hagrid's practical experience is unmatched, but he's never had formal pedagogical training. He would benefit from a subject leader who could guide and restrain him when needed. I propose inviting Mr. Owl, Newt Scamander, to be that leader. From what I've gathered, he would be delighted to help Hogwarts and inspire more students to love magical creatures." As for defense against the dark arts, Sebastian shook his head. Its uniqueness and the long-standing problem of a different professor every year makes recruitment difficult. Expecting a new teacher to devise complete, consistent lesson plans each year is unrealistic. For this course, we should make a special arrangement. He spoke with conviction. We should commission an experienced professor to prepare a reference curriculum for defense against the dark arts covering years 1 through 7. A new instructor could then use that syllabus as a model when planning their lessons. That would prevent wildly inconsistent teaching from year to year. Sebastian paused, then looked at Dumbledore and grinned. "As for who should prepare that reference curriculum, I think you, headmaster, would be ideal. Cough, cough. Dumbledore cleared his throat a few strategic times. Sebastian's suggestion had caught him off guard, and he was internally flustered. He had been listening closely and had even intended, after Sebastian finished, to hand the task of drafting a sample syllabus for the Defense Against the Dark Arts class to Severus or to Sebastian himself. Both of them were suitable. Who would have thought that, with a snap, the extra work would suddenly land squarely on his own shoulders? Work falling out of the sky while he was sitting at home, this was not how he'd planned to spend his time. He glanced toward Professor McGonagall, searching her face for objection. To his dismay, she looked positively approving, even a little eager. There was nothing he could do. All he had wanted was to be a calm headmaster, stroll the grounds, fuss over Fawkes, nibble on cockroach clusters, and ponder philosophical questions. He hadn't expected that even that small wish would be difficult to realize. Sebastian, as usual, had a knack for finding things for Dumbledore to do. Dumbledore tried a polite refusal. Sebastian, I admire your enthusiasm and your ideas for educational reform. Defense Against the Dark Arts is one of the most difficult courses at Hogwarts, and its circumstances do make a strong case for having a model syllabus. But I'm not the right person. It has been many years since I last taught in the classroom. I think this would be well suited to Remus Lupin or to Severus Snape. Severus effectively deputizes for that class every year. Preparing a syllabus is something he's used to. Sebastian could hardly contain his inward complaint. Lupin and Snape? Really? In other words, dump it on someone else. It would be fine to give it to Snape. With his devotion to Defense Against the Dark Arts, he might even volunteer. But next year's instructor would be Lupin, and given how poorly Lupin and Snape got along, it was unlikely Lupin would willingly adopt Snape's syllabus. And Snape was busy enough as it was. Lupin, meanwhile, although perfectly capable, lacked the kind of authority in the teaching community to make a syllabus everyone would accept. This was meant to be a document passed down through years. Given the peculiar turnover in that class, only Dumbledore could make it matter. As if reading his thoughts, Sebastian smiled and began to flatter him. You saying you're not suitable is far too modest. Everyone in the wizarding world knows you are the most powerful wizard among us. A mere syllabus for Defense Against the Dark Arts would be nothing to you. No one has a wider understanding of that subject than you do. Dumbledore felt a small sigh in his heart. If he tried to decline again, it would begin to look irresponsible. Sebastian noticed the hesitation and pressed on. You wouldn't need to invest years. 2 days' work this summer by you would provide future instructors with a clear direction. You needn't do all the minute planning, just design the framework. Lay out the teaching content and the plans. The specific lesson steps can be adjusted by the professors who follow. Of course, any additions should still be reviewed by you. We, as professors, are responsible to our students. With the Defense Against the Dark Arts changing hands every year, only a sample syllabus from you would be respected. Professor McGonagall chimed in, gently persuasive. Albus, Sebastian has a point. I think you should take this on. Dumbledore calculated quietly and then gave a helpless little smile. Very well. This holiday I shall compile a sample syllabus. Is that all, Sebastian? He asked. Sebastian drew a breath and spoke with an earnestness that made Dumbledore look at him through his half-moon spectacles. There is a deeper reason for this, headmaster. Last year I taught with the Auror training class. I saw a serious problem. The students' knowledge of the dark arts is too thin. They haven't been taught enough methods to counter real dark magic. These topics should rightfully be part of the Defense Against the Dark Arts curriculum. He lowered his voice, looking at the two professors. In theory, students should encounter examples of dark arts in class and learn how to resist them. But because dark arts are so sensitive, year after year, teachers take a better safe than sorry approach. They avoid showing dark magic to students and instead concentrate on defending against dark creatures. I think that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Headmaster, Sebastian continued, his expression solemn, Lord Voldemort will return. When he does, his followers will use the dark arts without restraint. Our students must know how to deal with different kinds of dark magic and how to protect themselves. I ask that When you compile the syllabus, you include material on dealing with dark arts. At the very least, that portion should be available to 6th and 7th year students. Dumbledore was moved. Dark arts. Sebastian had thought this through. It was a delicate matter. He would not be comfortable leaving it to any other professor. This was yet another reason the sample syllabus truly needed to come from him. With that settled in his mind, Dumbledore abandoned further pretense of reluctance and turned to more practical matters with McGonagall and Sebastian. Hogwarts had the funds. Dumbledore, with characteristic grandiosity, waved his hand and authorized a recruitment drive. For compulsory courses, add 2 more teaching professors so that every student might receive more individualized attention. For electives, add 1 additional professor where appropriate. For special cases, like Defense Against the Dark Arts, if a suitable replacement cannot be found, retain the existing structure, accepting that the responsible professor will have to shoulder teaching across all 7 years. "All right, Sebastian," Dumbledore said as dusk began to fall, and he rubbed his temples. "Let us leave it there for today. I will inform the other staff by owl and will contact you with the specifics. When the time comes, I'll trouble you to arrange for Swann Media to publish the recruitment advertisement," he added. Sebastian nodded, satisfied. The morning sun was climbing as Harry stepped off the night bus and, ignoring the cluttered street, made his familiar walk to the end of Spinner's End. Holidays were over. After only 2 days of rest, he was back to studying potions with Snape. It wasn't a hardship. If anything, Harry enjoyed it. He'd never understood Ron's fear of Professor Snape. The man looked stern, yes, but he taught with care and his voice had an oddly pleasing quality. Harry liked being in his lessons. Yesterday, Snape had told him his potion making had reached a 6th year standard, and that today they would tackle an especially complex brew. Harry could hardly contain his curiosity. Knock, knock, knock. The door opened, and a warm, unmistakable aroma hit him. Harry inhaled with a look of rapture. The scent of herbs and potions. There was nothing else like it. "Professor, good morning." Snape's mouth twitched into a brief, almost private smile. He inclined his head and led Harry into the workshop, to the long brewing bench. Jars and packets of ingredients filled the surface. Some were familiar, others entirely new. Harry's eyes widened when he realized how valuable many of them must be. "This potion is my birthday present to you this year," Snape said flatly. He gave a small flick of his wand, and a heavy potions book sailed into front of Harry, opening itself to a neatly handwritten page. Harry read the title and felt his heart skip. Baruffio's Brain Elixir. The potion's effects were spelled out: sharpened memory, improved concentration. It could significantly boost brain power. If this potion worked as described, Harry thought, it would be the dream of nearly every student at Hogwarts. Snape's voice cut in, cool and precise. "I've reviewed your marks across the board. Your practical work is almost always exemplary. But you fall short on memory-based tasks, particularly in history of magic and astronomy. As for recalling facts, Miss Granger outperforms you by a wide margin." Harry felt his cheeks warm. Of course, Hermione's memory always seemed superhuman. She read a page and could recall the sentences. Still, the thought of making his work easier cheered him. Snape continued, matter-of-factly, "You'll be a 3rd year when term begins, and with electives your workload will increase. Baruffios can make study easier, by a fraction. Do not expect miracles. It can increase memory by at most a fifth. A fifth." That was enough. Harry steadied himself and carefully read the recipe. It looked fiendishly intricate, far more complicated than last year's polyjuice. Some of the combinations seemed almost impossibly reactive. He felt a nervous sweat prick his palms. Snape's expression sharpened. "As the book warns," he said, voice flat as ice, "this potion is extremely difficult to brew. The ingredients are costly, the process intricate. One small error can have catastrophic consequences." "Catastrophic?" Harry echoed. "It can cause brain damage." Snape's gaze bored into him. "Baruffio's Brain Elixir has a high failure rate. If brewed imperfectly, it can overexcite neural tissue and damage the brain. The Ministry forbade its sale long ago to prevent inferior mixtures from poisoning the public. St. Mungo's still houses patients who drank counterfeit elixirs and never recovered." Hearing the history made sense of why he'd never seen the elixir sold. Harry felt a surge of gratitude that Snape was the one handling it, rather than some careless vendor. "I'll brew it once for demonstration," Snape said. "You will assist me. Watch how I handle each ingredient." Snape set Harry aside and began. He shredded silvery leaves with deft, economical motions and dropped them into the cauldron. The water, already gently simmering, turned a pale green at once, a correct reaction, Harry noted from the book. Next came dragon's tongue grass, lightly singed over flame before being added. The liquid took on a shining golden shimmer. The real danger lay in the moonstone powder and the blood-red crystal. Highly reactive, they demanded the right order and exact amounts. "Remember, Harry," Snape said, never taking his eyes off the brew, 7 stirs counterclockwise, then 3 clockwise. During the final counterclockwise motion, slowly add the blood-red crystal powder. Any deviation and the potion is ruined. Harry drilled the motions into his head as Snape worked. The powder went in. The cauldron began to hum softly as the liquid thickened and shifted from light green to a deep, glowing purple. "Prepare 4 fresh frog brains," Snape ordered. Harry didn't hesitate. He skinned and processed the frogs with practiced efficiency and extracted 4 perfect brains. "Wait until the purple is completely stable," Snape warned, before adding them. When the hue steadied, Snape held out his wand. The 4 brains rose and slid into the cauldron. The mixture leapt and steamed as if it were alive. Harry held his breath, watching the remaining ingredients and wondering how many more steps remained. The reaction slowly calmed. They waited, morning unspooled around them. A bead of sweat formed at Snape's temple as he tended the brew. After a long, careful sequence of adjustments and attentions, the potion finally settled. The surface smoothed, and the color shifted again, this time to a clear, pure green. Success. From a single glance at the cauldron, Harry was absolutely certain the brew had worked. The potion was the exact color the book described. Emerald green, clear as a jewel, without a single impurity. He couldn't help smiling. This was Baruffio's brain elixir, a fiendishly complicated draught where timing and stirring had to be perfect. He'd watched Professor Snape work all morning without a break. Just remembering those steps made his head spin. Snape had truly earned the title of Potion Master. He had succeeded on his first attempt. Harry turned to look at him, eyes bright with admiration. Snape noticed the gaze and, for a rare moment, allowed himself to feel pleased. He kept his face composed, though, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow as he studied the potion. He wasn't done yet. This was not something to be careless about. A single mistake could ruin the brew, or worse. Snape ladled a small amount into a test tube and held it up to the light, scrutinizing its color and consistency. Harry watched every movement, breath held. So it wasn't over yet. Every action Snape made was steady and precise. After a final examination, Snape relaxed a fraction and inwardly let out a long breath of relief. The potion was perfect, even better than some he had brewed in his youth. He had worried he might fail. He hadn't made Baruffio's brain elixir in many years. Now it seemed his skill had not dulled. A faint, satisfied smile flickered across Snape's face, and a warmth, so rare as to be almost invisible, softened his eyes. The brew was successful. "For safety, though, it should be diluted," he added. 5-to-1 or 6-to-1 is ideal. He made a bottle of distilled water float to his hand and with exacting control poured it into the test tube. The emerald liquid paled gradually to a gentle, light green. Snape decanted the diluted potion into a small crystal vial and handed it to Harry. "This is your gift for the year. Drink it." Harry took the vial. It felt cool and smooth in his palm. The pale green liquid swirled within, giving off a faint, peculiar scent. Anticipation, curiosity, excitement, and nerves tangled together, making his hand tremble slightly. "Thank you, Professor." He felt touched. Snape never attended his birthday, but he never forgot the gift. Every year without fail, he gave him rare potions. Harry looked up, eyes shining. "Professor, aren't you going to drink any yourself?" "You should drink it," Snape said. "Baruffio's is only fully effective the first time it's taken. I had my dose when I was younger. This one is yours." Harry nodded, taking Snape's concern to heart. He drew a deep breath, tipped the vial back, and swallowed it in a single gulp. The moment the potion slid down his throat, a cool, warm current spread through him. It felt both soothing and electric, as if some gentle force was nourishing his nerves and sweeping into every corner of his mind. Thoughts began to race. His memory seemed to sharpen. The complicated brewing steps that had once given him headaches slid into place. Details Professor Snape had mentioned, the timing and the exact motions, surfaced as if they'd been there all along. Harry blinked, adapting to the new clarity. His brain felt relaxed and extraordinarily active. This was what improved memory felt like. He could almost hear his own thoughts clicking into order. So cool. Maybe he wouldn't have to dread history of magic or astronomy this year. "How do you feel?" Snape asked, watching him. "Fantastic," Harry said, grinning. "I've never felt my head so clear. In the summer after first year, you made me drink a wit-sharpening potion, but Barufio's is so much stronger." "Wit-sharpening?" Snape raised an eyebrow. "Wit-sharpening merely stimulates the mind temporarily. Compared to Barufio's, it's inferior. Barufio's can improve your memory, but the full effect isn't instantaneous. You'll need time to adapt to what it does. Of course," he added, in a tone that carried warning, "it may have a minor side effect." Harry's smile faltered. "Side effect?" Snape regarded him evenly. "Until you have fully adapted, you may have some difficulty falling asleep. It passes within a month. Do not rely on it," Snape continued. "It can improve your memory, but it cannot learn for you. Knowledge still must be acquired through effort." "All right," he said, softer now. "While your mind is still sharp, review the brewing process we just used. I'll go prepare lunch." "Lunch?" The word made Harry's expression go very serious. Memories of Snape's cooking, an unspoken hazard of letting Snape take over the kitchen, flashed through him. He stepped forward, grabbed Snape's sleeve, and tugged him toward the living room. "Professor, you've worked all morning. You must be exhausted. You're not making lunch." He poured a glass of cola and set it in Snape's hand. "Sit on the sofa and rest. I'll take care of lunch." "Leave the lunch to me," Harry insisted, and before Snape could protest, he darted into the kitchen. Snape watched him go and for the second time that morning felt something like a genuine smile. The child was considerate, annoying at times, but always considerate. He settled back on the sofa, picked up the glass of cola, and took a tentative sip. It was sweet, far sweeter than he would have expected, and for a moment he allowed himself the pleasure of it.